Circuit Broadcasting Systems would like to thank you for tuning in to the all-new WJMG 92.1 FM. It is now time for the Right to Vote show featuring Congressman Ronnie Showers.
Hello, everyone. This is Ronnie Showers, your Right to Vote program on September the 22nd, 2022. And folks, have I got a great show today. It's not because of me. It's because of the people that's willing to come on our show. We're going to have Anna Wolfe on, and right now she's sitting in the courtroom with former Welfare Director John Davis, ready to plead guilty to the state and federal charges. So she's reporting on that, and as soon as she gets through, she'll be on the show with us. And also, I have a very good friend of mine and former U.S. Attorney General, appointed by our friend Bill Clinton. Is he on? Okay. All right.
Ronnie, I'm actually here.
Anna, great. Okay. Brad, are you on?
I just left the courthouse.
Oh, well, we appreciate you getting on. This is going to be great. And we're trying to get Brad on right now. All right. Hey, Brad, are you on? Is he going to get him? He's working.
Connection's a little bad on my end. I don't know if he's having a problem, but
no,
I can give you the update on.
Yeah, let's do that till we get Brad on. We maybe we're having a little trouble. All right.
Brad's here now, and I can hear both of you.
Great. Well, before we get started, let me go ahead and recognize the WJMG 921 FM Southeast Mississippi. That's our Facebook. And let's don't forget, the reason we're able to do this was Vernon J. Floyd, the founder and operator of the station, and our new owner, C.J. Lee, and contributor Sandra Jordan. But folks, we're going to have the full session today is going to be about the fraud case in Mississippi on the welfare. And these two experts, Anna's a reporter that's ought to get the Pulitzer Prize for doing this. I don't think we've had any better reporting on the subject. It's going to be more important to people in this state and probably across the country, because if they're taking this block grant money and using it in Mississippi with some of these other states who's running them, probably got the same thing going over there in these other states. And Brad Pigott, who was the U.S. Attorney for Mississippi, appointed by President Bill Clinton. So Anna, let's let you give your report first, and then we'll get with Brad Pigott, the former attorney representing the welfare department in this fraud case until I call him Tater, but Governor Reeves fired him. And I think you'll find this very interesting. So go ahead, Anna, and tell us what you got. How's it going?
I'll go real quick because I'm much more interested in hearing from Brad. But I just left the courthouse where John Davis pled guilty to 18 counts, 5 counts of conspiracy and 13 counts of fraud against the government related to his spending of DHS funds, temporary assistance for needy families funds, mostly related to payments that he directed to a wrestler named Brett DiBiase. And this was a guy who was working for a nonprofit that was receiving welfare money, but he also had a contract with the state to provide opioid addiction education to people across the state. He was not doing that work. Instead, he was actually in rehab himself at a luxury rehab facility in California, which was also paid for $160,000 with money from the state's welfare program. So he has pled guilty to those counts. Adrienne Wooten was the judge, and she kind of laid into him, frankly, about, why did you do this? And he didn't really have, a very...
Hello?
He hasn't been sentenced yet. They're recommending that they wait because he is going to be aiding the prosecution. And when we were leaving the courthouse, the DA said that in particular, they're really looking for Davis's cooperation with the ongoing investigation in order to move up the ladder in terms of the people who need to be held accountable for perpetuating the scheme. And so move up the ladder, well, John Davis's boss was Phil Bryant. And as we know, based on these text messages that have been released, there was lots of communication between these people and Phil Bryant about welfare spending. The recommendation from the state is that he not receive any more time in the state case above what he receives in the federal case. So he also pled guilty earlier this morning to 2 charges in federal court related to payments that he made not to Brett DiBiase, but his brother Teddy DiBiase, also a former professional wrestler. Okay, I know that was a mouthful, but that's what I got so far, and I'll let you take it from there.
Anna, you're such an amazing reporter. I don't know how we got you down here in Mississippi today, but we just don't want you to leave. But I know bigger things are coming for you, but we wish you the best. But anyway, well, Brad, kind of give us your experience working with this. Well, it was okay with the welfare department until the governor got in. Why don't you kind of tell us about all that? I think people would be interested in it.
Sure. Well, I mean, as a former federal prosecutor, my hope and frankly my expectation is that we're just ending Act 1 now, and most plays have 3 acts. Because only as of today does the former head of the Department of Human Services of Mississippi have the ability and the incentive and the obligation to tell all, to FBI agents, to state criminal prosecutors, about things like what were his communications with people more powerful than him and more wealthy than him about what TANF meant. To all of your listeners, I think when you say needy families, that has a meaning in the English language. And TANF, which just stands for TANF, Temporary Assistance to Needy Families. When it was enacted at the national level in the 1990s, it was called welfare reform. The N and the F in TANF means needy families. And of the amounts that we challenged in the civil litigation and the amounts that both now the state prosecutor, Jody Owens, and the United States Attorney's Office have both obtained guilty pleas for, those transactions were way, way, way outside of what I think any of your listeners would think of in the common sense world as serving needy families. Anna mentioned that the guilty plea today was largely concerning Ms. Davis's involvement in getting about $5 million to a father and son pair of former professional wrestlers. The guy who was the dad of the pair was known on the stage of wrestling around the country, around the world, as the $1 Million Man. He made his own appearance on a television show that some people might remember. For all I know, it's still on. And that's called Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. Now, this is the guy who, along with his son, Teddy DiBiase, got about $5 million in TANF welfare money from the state of Mississippi at the insistence of John Davis, who has now pled guilty and properly at long last recognized and admitted to the people of the state and to the court that was against the law, that had little or nothing to do with helping economically needy families. And so hopefully we are just beginning to get to the full scope of what went wrong here. And Anna is right that from her brilliant reporting that Mississippi Today has itself done such a good job on. This is a telling story that applies to 50 of 50 states. This is reverse Robin Hood. This is taking millions of dollars from the poor and giving it to the rich. And most of us are against that kind of thing.
Absolutely. Anna, were you going to say something else? I thought I heard you.
No, he's so right. It's kind of like a laugh to keep from crying situation. Just the reverse Robin Hood, analogy. Like that's exactly what it is.
Well, let me ask.
It's not funny. It's just so appalling.
Yes. Let me ask both of you this: is it going to go back further than Phil Bryant? Is it going to get in this new administration, or when he was lieutenant governor, or maybe even before that during Katrina? During Katrina. I don't know how far back this can go. Brad, you might could tell us that.
Well, how far it will go, we'll come to see. It's very hard for me as a former federal prosecutor, knowing the resources available to the United States Department of Justice. It's very hard for me to believe that we've seen the final confession in open court about this episode and how these tens of millions of dollars got diverted. We know, thanks largely to Anna Wolfe's reporting in Mississippi Today, two things about the current governor, and that is his personal trainer got over $1 million in public money set aside to serve poor people and to get families out of poverty. His personal trainer. John Davis, in an email, as I recall, characterized that $1 million+ gift to Tate Reeves' personal trainer as the lieutenant governor's project. And that was when Tate Reeves was indeed lieutenant governor. So in addition to that, the largest ultimate recipient of this TANF welfare money was the University of Southern Mississippi Athletic Foundation to build a volleyball arena. And the current governor to this day has not allowed any of us who had been or are involved in the civil litigation to speak a word in court or on a civil pleading about getting that money back for the taxpayers. It is the great $5 million unmentionable. And I, as the lawyer, having been asked by the Department of Human Services to represent the taxpayers in the state's best interests in getting every dollar back that we could, was fired by the current governor for trying to get the facts about that transaction through a civil subpoena. So we know those two things about the current governor. The previous governor has essentially said what he knew and thought and tried to get done through his texts that, again, have been widely published thanks to Mississippi Today. And back when in the olden days in the previous century, when I was United States attorney, we didn't have, nobody in court had the kind of proof that texts provide about what people were really thinking and what was really in their mind and what they really wanted done. Letters never did that. Memos never did that. People never created a totally retrievable effort of what they were thinking like texts do. We used to think that emails did that, but texts are more conversational. They're more, frankly, impulsive, and they show exactly what people are thinking. And the previous governor, Phil Bryant, has left a long trail of texts, which, as we say, as they, I assume they used to say in Jeff Davis County, Ronnie, and I know they used to say in Pike County, they're not going anywhere.
No, they're there, buddy.
They're not going anywhere. And they have been published by Anna. They have been scrutinized by Anna. She has, bless her heart, as we also say in Pike in Jefferson County, but perhaps not where she's from. Bless her heart, she's gone through tens of thousands of texts in order to find for the public the ones that really do count and that are not going anywhere.
Well, and this is what I tell Anna, with all, and I'm not trying not to be partisan on this issue, but where all the Republican governors have complete control of the state like they do in Mississippi, I can believe the same concept has played through these states. And I might say some Democrat governors didn't do it, but with no oversight. And what do you think about that, Brad? Don't you think this is just a blueprint for other states that have probably done the same thing?
Especially southern states, yes. And I, too, have tried hard to keep partisan politics out of this because all of this is a lot more important than that. And we Democrats, big and little d, are not without sin ourselves in all things. But in the deep southern states where you have essentially what have become one-party states, elected in primaries in which almost no African Americans participate. You've got two cultures passing in the night with little regard for one another, and you've got a series of governors who are getting these tens of millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars in the Deep South collectively, who are given all this money to engage with people who want to cajole and inspire people out of poverty. And they don't have any relationships or don't have many relationships with which to do that. They don't take the mission seriously. You can tell when you see what they do with the money. I mean, Miss New, bless her heart, who's now going to be going to prison for what she did. She got tens of millions of dollars because she had far more connections with the then Governor Bryant's political party than she did with the people in Mississippi, of whom there are many, who really have what I would call the heart and the soul and the skills to cajole people out of poverty. And that's what it is. We're not talking about, nobody is defending the idea of giving checks to poor people under no conditions. Those days are indeed gone. But there are things we can do from children forward to raise their expectations about the consequences to them of working hard and staying in school and doing the different things that in fact will get people out of poverty. But when the money is given to other kinds of people with no regard for that, with no faith in the capacity of poor children, then this kind of thing is going to happen.
Absolutely. And I'll give you another agency. I know for a fact, well, not a fact, but I know people that retire from Medicaid. Oops, dropped my phone. that these, when they retire, they just bid them off to these. I mean, there was one contract for Medicaid for $120 million to a private sector that the Medicaid was already doing it. Now, have I got proof for that? No. But I have faith in some people I know, and that's the reason they retired. I mean, I think this is going to be prevalent in so many issues on health care, on helping the poor, and expanding Medicaid, and why not be done. I had my neighbor used to be CEO of a Delta Hospital Association up there, and he had a number of hospitals. And he says there's about 9 hospitals in the Delta that's going to close because they're not expanding Medicaid. So, but hey, Anna, let me ask you this. In the hearing today, you don't know what kind of sentence they're going to be getting or anything like that, or prison time, or is he going to get off for giving information? Where are we at on that?
Yeah, well, first, can I address that Medicaid question that you brought up? So I think what you're talking about is the managed care companies. Yeah. So Medicaid is it is the largest agency in the state in terms of federal dollars that we get. It's an enormous amount of money that we get to provide health insurance to very poor individuals and families. So Mississippi has sort of contracted all of that work out to a few companies. I think it's 3 companies right now. So instead of being fee for service, so a person, who may be living in poverty goes to the hospital, they have Medicaid, and so they get their services, and then Medicaid reimburses the hospital for the services that they get, right? It's not working like that anymore. Now we have managed care, which means that instead of paying fee for services, we're just paying hundreds of millions of dollars to these companies to provide the insurance themselves. And so what that means is that it's created a layer of separation from the state agency that actually administers the fund and the person that's getting the health care. And so now they have to go to these private insurance companies in order to get approved for health care. And so if you think about that as sort of the privatization of this public service, that's exactly what happened in the TANF program that resulted in all of this fraud and misspending. We farmed out all of the services to these two nonprofits, tens of millions of dollars that we were giving the nonprofits, basically just giving them the authority to spend the money, just like we've done with these managed care companies, in Medicaid. And this is what has caused all of this corruption, is this model of privatization. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I see a lot of parallels there.
This is Brad again. You're absolutely right. A lot of what I do, in fact, all of what I do from here on out in my career has to do as a private lawyer with filing on behalf of so-called whistleblowers, cases involving Medicare and Medicaid fraud under what we call the False Claims Act. And my clients who are the whistleblowers can get a fraction of what is ultimately recovered. Mm-hmm. And Anna, you're exactly right. Managed care is a program in which the government gives to a private insurance company a fixed dollar amount for each person who is insured, in this case Medicaid, based on their purported diagnosis. Mm-hmm. And the private insurance company gets that money and gets to keep it regardless of whether the person gets any health care. And here is where it really gets bad. Every dollar that the private insurance company pays for such a person to go to the doctor or to the hospital is a dollar that they cannot keep for themselves in profit. Mm-hmm. So they have an incentive to keep that dollar for themselves rather than pay your doctor and your hospital. This is a problem. It creates a zero-sum game in which they're trying to keep the money and not pay it out in claims for health care, and you need health care. So it creates a tension of interests, which is not true when the government itself, through its payment contractors, is paying claims directly out of government money. The government has no incentive to stop you. A government employee has no incentive to stop you from getting health care. Right. If you send a bill, they have an incentive to pay the bill according to their protocol. But if you're a private insurance company, put at the mercy of a company that is receiving 100% of their income is from the government. They're trying to, they don't want to pay out claims. So this is a profound problem.
And all of this privatization is done under the guise of saving the government money. So if we pay these insurance companies up front, we know how much it's going to be. It's not dependent on how much care Mississippians are getting every year. It is a fixed rate, and it's done under this assumption that we're saving the government money by doing this. When in reality, I think the end result is less care being like, as you said, being delivered to people in need.
Well, folks, I'm going to tell you, think about this. Look at privatizing prisons. It's a way to make money. It's a way to make money. All these charter schools. I've just got a text from a lady, and I'm not going to give her a name because I don't want to get her in trouble. But I'm going to read what she sent me. Our son was doing his USM graduate clinical in psychology at Spectrum. It was Doctors News funded clinic in Jackson. When it was closed down and New was arrested, the damage to students, faculty, and administration at USM due to these grievous crimes. Did you know about this previous record, Anna? Hello?
No. Yeah, sorry. You're talking about the private schools that Nancy ran.
Well, and she had a, what do you call it, funded clinic in Jackson. It was called Spectrum. Did you know about that one?
Yes, it's it's a specialty school for people or for children with autism and other learning difficulties. And it was operating and it was providing services to kids, but in a separate federal scheme that has nothing to do with the welfare case. She was also defrauding the Department of Education in Mississippi out of public education dollars that were supposed to go to needy kids with disabilities. and they were pulling down the money, saying that they were serving so many kids, in some cases, kids who didn't even go to the school, and paying for teachers who didn't exist or didn't work at the school.
All right. So this is before all this latest scheme, right?
This was happening sort of around the same time frame, but she was charged with these crimes back in 2021, and she pled guilty to them last April.
Well, did she get any time for the? So they'll certainly figure that in here. I guess it depends how much information she gives up. I don't know.
Yeah, she'll be sentenced under the federal charges, and then whatever time she gets in the federal case, that will essentially be what she serves in the welfare case based on the deal that she struck with the DA.
Boy, she's going to have a lot to answer when she's in the next world and say, I was a good steward of my people's money. Oh, my God. Well, this is overwhelming. I've got friends in California that we're going to put this program up on YouTube and send it out, and I'm going to make it available for people who are not able to hear it right now live. But my friends in Atlanta and California are certainly wanting to hear this. And they're just right on top of it. They just want to keep up with it. Anna, let me ask you about this, and you probably know more about this than Brad does. I understand that Chad White, the auditor, was at Collins. Can you tell me kind of how that went, or are you familiar with that, or have you heard anything about it?
Was the state auditor was what now?
He was at Collins talking to the Republican businesswomen, I think. And I understand that he was saying he was going to follow this all the way to the end, but he kind of alluded that some of the higher-ups may just get, no prison time and because of the civil service, I guess. But do you think him being a former employee of the Governor Bryan, he's going to try to take care of Bryan and keep him from getting what's due to him if he's found guilty?
I think it's important to note that the state auditor investigated this case initially, and his office made the initial 6 arrests back in 2020. Mm-hmm. Since then, he says he's passed off all of the information to federal authorities, which I'm inclined to believe that, he's working with the federal authorities to investigate the case moving forward. And so, it is a little bit out of his hands now. Okay. At least there are many other entities involved. The DA, Jody Owens, is still investigating, still has a hand in that investigation. And just today, I think I mentioned this, but after John Davis's guilty plea, and I can talk about the sentence here in a minute, but just after he pled guilty, the DA said that, it was important that they got this guilty plea so that John Davis could provide information so that they could go higher up the ladder. And that's the phrasing that he used, higher up the ladder. John Davis's boss was Phil Bryant. And as we know, Phil Bryant had as much authority over how TANF would be spent as much as anyone in the state. He had the authority to determine how those funds would be used.
Well, I just hope they go back to the last administration and the previous administration, because it's just suspicious that there's no oversight over these monies. We even had some problems with the BP money, some extorting, and I can't see it not happening I don't know how far it allows to go back, but I just hope they go all the way back. There's no reason people ought to get away with this. I know this. If I did that, let's say I was highway, my 2 previous predecessors went to federal penitentiary. There's one thing I promised my wife: I ain't going to look over my head behind me worrying about what's going to come down on me. If somebody tried to give me money they wasn't supposed to, son, I didn't take it. I didn't want it. It ain't worth going to prison and ruining your reputation and shaming your family. And we had 2 predecessors of the highway commissioners and also the public service commissioners who did the same thing. And it's just when people have no fear of being penalized for it. And right now it's hard. If it hadn't been for this particular reporter staying on it for 3 years, I doubt if we'd hear anything about it now. And
doubt that this is Brad. I doubt that we would have. but I do not think it's over. My gut feeling and my experience tell me that it's not over. For instance, a person who I don't think we've mentioned it this afternoon, but Zach New, the son of Nancy New, has him pled guilty to the state, to the district attorney in the summer. And as Anna has reported, Zach New pled guilty, among other things, to having helped to implement a $4 or $5 million transfer of TANF welfare money to the University of Southern Mississippi Athletic Foundation to build a volleyball arena that was outside the purpose of the TANF statute. Mm-hmm. That has been, not only was he clearly charged with doing that, but he pled guilty to that, admitting that beyond any reasonable doubt, that conduct in implementing that multi-million-dollar transaction was against the law and was outside of the TANF purpose. Now, many of us are going to be asking from this point forward, if that conduct is criminal conduct for purposes of charging and convicting Mr. New, which Mr. New admits, and for which he in part will go to jail now. Mm-hmm. Why isn't this against the law to direct or orchestrate exactly the same transaction from on high? Mm-hmm. Whether you're the governor of the state whose texts revealed you're intimately involved in causing the same transaction to happen, or whether you were Mr. Favre, who all but badgered the governor and the state to do that transaction. Mm-hmm. I mean, why is it? And the answer is obvious. It's against the law, regardless of who is willfully involved in the transaction. It's the same transaction. It's the same dollars. It's the same culpability. And to many of us, it would be a very incomplete result in this welfare fraud scandal for just the people who were implementing the transactions under the direction of those more powerful and more wealthy than they, to be the only ones who serve prison time for this scandalous conduct.
Well, it always go to the top, but they all spend time.
Right.
If they're guilty. I'm not saying if they're not guilty. I just had one question somebody sent me. Anna, do you have any reason why Dr. Johnson decided to resign early? That was Bennett at Southern.
That has come up a lot, but I don't have an answer for that. I don't know if it's related. I can't say that.
All right, I got 5 minutes left. All right, so I'm gonna turn you guys loose and let you talk, and then I'll close it out. But Brad, is there anything else you want to quickly get in before we run out of time?
Well, quickly, and I hope it's a minute or so, because I want to hear more from Anna.
Yeah.
You alluded, Ronnie, to one of the problems here, which is that if you want something done with public money, taxpayer money, you need to give control over that money to somebody who cares about getting the mission accomplished and the result done. Mm-hmm. If the government offered to give me $10 million in order to help rich people buy better yachts, first of all, I would say, no, I'm not interested in that project. But if I took the money, I would not do a good job at helping them buy better yachts. It's just not among the things I have any passion about.
Right.
So these governors in the Deep South states, apparently, certainly our governors have, in the case of at least Mr. Bryant, have given millions of dollars to people who they knew didn't have the kinds of relationships, or apparently didn't have the kinds of interests to do this mission of fighting poverty. And the result is tragic, and in every way tragic. The substance of what happened and the fact that people are going to prison is always tragic. None of us wishes that result for anybody, high or low.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that if this story isn't a case for reforming welfare nationally, like, I don't know what is. I think that's the larger point that we need to keep in our focus, is that $16 billion within this program are going out to states every year. And the federal government isn't even asking states to use the money to help people. It's not asking the state to prove what they're doing with the money and the outcomes that they're achieving. That's a problem. If the state isn't required to do that, what's making them do that? What's making them care about the people that they're supposed to be serving, as Brad says that they should? I mean, there is a deep illness within this federal program on the national level.
It's all about not having oversight. Used to, when the legislature was either predominantly Democrat, but there was a while there that you had check and balance. If the Republican controlled, the legislature was still Democratic, so they do peer investigations and stuff like that. And the reversal, but what we have now, and I want the people to listen to this, and this is the reason you go vote. This is the reason your state gets in this situation. You don't have the check and balances because you don't have the balance in our legislature. You can have all the governors and lieutenants, but the legislature controls the laws. The governor can only make a proposition. The legislature has to fund it, has to do it. And we got a bunch of people up there that evidently is with them in what they're doing. And
right.
So in closing, let me say this. I would certainly like to have both of you on again. And I understand, Brad, you've been doing some interviews with some other folks too. And I know Anna has. I saw her on NBC the other night, and she represented us well. And I know you have too. I know you have too. But I certainly want both of you let's keep in touch. And I'd like for you, Anna and Brad, keep us up to date on what you're hearing, because I know your information is a lot more reliable than what I get, because I get all mine from guys like you, and that's who I count on. So if you would do that, I'd certainly appreciate it. And certainly if you have something you want to have on this show, we can bring it out to the people, because I want to encourage people to vote. And it's like Vernon Damer said, folks, if you don't vote, you don't count. And when you don't vote, we got what we got. Yeah. So anyway, God bless you guys. Appreciate you a lot. The state appreciate a lot of needy families appreciating what you're doing right now and stepping up to the plate. We do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Anna. And everybody, let's stay tuned next Thursday. I don't know what we're going to have. I don't know if it can be as good as this, but we're going to try to have something entertaining and maybe keep you posted on how this thing is going, and I'll try to keep everybody posted. So keep listening to 92.1 FM or 93.1 FM, and let's stay on top of this thing, because if you let it go, you only get one shot at this. So God bless America, God bless Mississippi, and God bless this station. We'll talk to you next Thursday. Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of The Right to Vote Show featuring Congressman Ronnie Shiles. The Right to Vote Show airs every Thursday at 12:30 p.m. Central Standard Time on WJMG 92.1 FM and WGDQ 93.1 FM. You can also stream The Right to Vote Show at cbsllc.live, as well as recapture previous episodes. Once again, thank you for tuning in to another episode of The Right to Vote Show featuring Congressman Ronnie Shiles.